Welcome back. We're going to cover Logic Game 6 in the series today. And if you take a look in the upper right, you'll see this is drawn from PrepTest 65. If you just look at the website below, our website, crushtheLSAT.org, if you go there, you'll see a link to the book you need to buy that includes PrepTest 65. So this one, similar to the previous test, I should say similar to the game we just did in the previous lesson. And then at the end, we're going to recommend 5 apps, 5 free apps you can download that are going to make not only your LSAT prep easier, but quite honestly, your life a lot easier. The goal of this website is not just to teach you how to do logic games, it's to really get you prepared for the LSAT in all respects, put you on a really good path from now until the day of the test that will help you excel. And we'll talk about some ways the digital world, some free apps can make things a little easier, make your 16-week plan a little easier to excel on test day. So let's jump ahead here, jump right into the game. In this game, a professor has 5 students, F, G, H, J, K, who are going to be performing in a piano recital. And it's a very clear sequencing game. We're going to have 5 people performing in order 1 through 5. And let's take a look at the rules here. Rule 1, G performs earlier than F. So we have G before F. We'll write it out that way. And I'm just going to put a little dot by on top of G, on top of F. Always helpful to keep track of sort of which items are mentioned in a rule and which aren't, if any. Rule 2, K before H and J. So K before H and before J. Now, H and J, does H precede J or does it come after J? Well, we don't know. We just know that Kevin comes before the 2 of them. All right. And I'll note above that, okay, so now we talked about K, H, J. So far, we've mentioned all the items in the rule. How about rule 3? H has to perform either immediately before or after F. So basically, they're going to be right next to each other. So we're going to diagram it this way. How about the first one will be H or F, and then the other one will be right next to that person. So basically, you can think of this as sort of a block, really. We're going to call it our HF block. All right, so the rules, and of course, we've now talked about H twice, so I'll put the dot there and F twice. So the rules, not too complicated here. All right, next, most important step, combine the rules. And usually when I do this, I sort of write an underline and then write the rules, the combined rules underneath that. Here, we're actually just going to do it right up top. I mean, let's look at the GF rule. So F, put another space. Basically, this is our F. I called it our HF block. Well, now we'll call it our FH block. Our FH block right there. So now I can basically erase rule 3. And rule 2, so K has to come before H. That means what? K has to come before the entire FH block. And so now I can even sort of ignore that line I had. And then J, let's write this out. I'm going to write this out below to sketch it all out. So we have our FH block. G comes at some point before F and H. So does K. So I'll write that. And then J comes at some point after K. And you'll see lots of games that have lots of rules like this. Now, here's a very important point to get used to, really. Here's a question. Does J have to come after G? It doesn't. Even after combining the rules, all we know is that G and K both precede F and H. We know that J has to come after K, but doesn't necessarily have to come after G. Suppose the first slot were filled by K, and then the second slot were J, and then the third were G, and then FH, FH. That would be fine. That doesn't violate any rules. So you could describe this diagram as kind of loose sequencing. We haven't placed anybody into a particular slot. There's no rule that says that so-and-so has to be in either slot 1 or slot 6 like we had in the last game. Here, when you combine the rules, maybe a little bit more difficult to visualize things, that J actually could come before G. Just something to get used to. Okay, so now what do we do? Well, if you think back to earlier games, what do? We put rules in the diagram. That's one thing we did. Another thing we did was we always looked to see, are there 2 or possibly 3 what I call states of the world, 2 or 3 broad scenarios that we can use to kind of simplify things. And so here, ask yourself, are there 2 groups we could create here? Could we write another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and really make this game a lot more simple? And so while I write these spaces out, why don't you pause for a moment and see if you can think of 2 different diagrams we can look at. World 1, World 2. Scenario 1, Scenario 2. Just pause for a moment and see what you can come up with. Take a look at this big FH block. We only have 5 spaces here. We know that F and H, they have to be preceded by G and K. Where can you put that block? Well, let's start at the right and then move to the left. So suppose that we're in 4 and 5. I say it, I mean the block. Suppose we had F or H and then F or H here. What can we write in here? We know that G and K have to come to the left of F and H. And we know that K has to come before J. So let's write this. Let's write K before J and then G underneath it. In this scenario, G could go where? It could be in either the first, second, or third slot, and K has to come before J. So that's world 1. Now what about world 2? Well, the FH block, we can move that 1 slot to the left, but only 1 slot, because we still have to have K and G coming before F and H. I'll write it that way. But J, we look down at our rules here. J can come to the right. J can be in slot 5. So once you write it out that way, this game becomes much, much easier to solve. And that'll become clear as we look at the questions. Now, first thing we'll do is take care of our acceptable situation question. This is a very typical acceptable situation question, question 1. And what do? We take one rule, see which choice we can eliminate, then take the second rule, see what we can eliminate, etc., till we find the right answer. So we'll take a look at the first rule. The first rule was that G has to come before F. So what can we get rid of? G before F. So A is fine, B is fine, C, D, but look at E. H comes after F, so E is gone. Why don't you pause for a moment, take a look at the next rule, see what you can eliminate, take a look at the next rule, see what you can eliminate, and then we'll come back. Okay, rule 2 was that K has to come before J and K has to come before H. Rule 2 was really 2 rules. So with rule 2, you can get rid of A and you can also get rid of B. How about rule 3? H and F have to be right next to each other. In answer choice C, you do not have H and F next to each other, so answer D to this question. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide, and I am going to take my combination of the rules and move it to the left just to give myself some more room here. We'll take a look at question 2 here, and by the way, I want to underline my master sketch, don't want to tamper with it. Question 2, if J comes before G, then which of the following could be true? So, well, first of all, we're in world 1. I'll label this as question 2. J before G. So I'm just going to write the first 3 slots here. J before G, what do we have? We have K, J, G. That's the only possibility. Now, which of the following could be true? The correct answer is not going to involve K, J, or G because we know where they must be placed. What we're not certain about is the placement of F and H. One could be in 4 and one could be in 5. So in a could be true question, you can bet the correct answer it's going to involve either F or H. And if you take a look very quickly, A. Clearly A, the correct answer. All right, which question to take on next? Well, question 3, I said I'd like to avoid a general question and go to one that gives me some details, just like this question 2 did. So we'll pass over 3 for a moment. Question 4, also not an obvious way to dive into question 4. How about 5? How many students are there, any one of whom could perform 4th? And let me switch slides here. Well, let's look at slot 4. In world 1, could be F or H. World 2, could be F or H. Boom. Answer B, 2. Not hard at all. Okay, let's go back to question 3. Question 3, which of the following cannot be true? So of these choices, 4 of them have statements that could be true, and only 1 tells you something that absolutely cannot be true. All right, so let's take a look at A. F immediately before J. Could that be true? It could be true. World 2, that could be true. So A is out. How about B? G immediately before H. That could be true in scenario 1 and in scenario 2. So that is definitely out. How about C? H immediately before G. Well, in the first scenario, H, it's either in 4 or 5. Can't be before G. In the second scenario, H, it could be before F. It could be before J, but cannot be before G. C is the right answer. And finally, question 4. The order is fully determined if which of the following is true. Why don't you pause for a moment, take a look at the 5 choices, and see what you think. Let's take a look. F immediately before H. Well, obviously, that isn't helpful at all, right? We can get rid of that one very quickly. How about B? G immediately before F. So you look at the first scenario, G before F. Okay, that means you're going to have G, F, H. K, J are going to be slots 1, 2. So you're going to have K, J, G, F, H. Now, here's the question. In world 2, are you going to have exactly the same arrangement if G comes immediately before F? Well, you're not. Because in scenario 2, the last letter is J, right? So although you do get a complete arrangement in each of the two scenarios when you put G immediately before F, you get different arrangements. So B, not the correct answer. How about C, H immediately before J? Well, not possible in scenario 1. And here, by the way, I'll note that this is question 4. How about in scenario 2, H immediately before J? Well, then, fine. The last 3 slots, if it's J preceded by H, then that would be preceded by F. But who goes in 1 and 2? K and G. Either could go in 1 and the other could go in 2. So C is out. How about D? J immediately before H. All right, so similar story. Let's take a look over here on the left, and I'll write out our five slots. Excuse me, J immediately before H. So if that were the case, we would have J in what? Slot 3. H would be in 4. F would be in 5. But who goes in 1 and 2? Here again, K and G are interchangeable. So D is out. So let's take a look at E. If K is immediately before F, does that give us only one possible arrangement? Does that fully determine the order of the students? It does. K immediately before F. So can't happen in scenario 1, but let's just draw it out in scenario 2. So if K were before F, right before F, we would have K, F, those would be slots 2 and 3. We would have H, J, and then the first slot would be G. So yes, E is the correct answer. So this game would be considered a pretty easy one. You see up here, goal to you want to get to a point where you can do this in about 5 minutes. But an interesting distinction between this game and the last game. In both games, we could create these 2 broad scenarios. Last time, it was pretty obvious what the 2 scenarios were going to be. We had an item that was either in slot 1 or in slot 6. Here, we had to figure out what the 2 scenarios were going to be by asking, well, where's this big FH block going to go? And it can either be slots 4 and 5, or it can be in slots 3 or 4. So always something to think about. Can I create 2 or 3 broad scenarios? All right, today's top 5 list. Now, before I show you this list, I just want to give you a little background by telling you a story, and I'll try to keep it quick. Back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s, there was a renowned figure in the fields of business management and management consulting. His name was Peter Drucker. Wrote dozens of books over the course of 40 years, and one of them is called The Effective Executive. And it wasn't just written for executives, it was written for really anybody. And one of the chapters was titled Know Thy Time. And here's a quote from the chapter, and you're obviously more than welcome to pause and take a look if you'd like to. But the story is that when Drucker would work with executives and consult executives, he'd ask them, how do you spend your time? And they'd show him their calendar, or they'd give him a description. And then Drucker followed them around for a week and tracked what they actually did. And he found that typically what people said their week was going to look like, or what they predicted their week was going to look like, and what it actually looked like were very, very different. And you'll see in the quote here, he says effective executives, but he's really talking about everybody. He says they start by finding out where their time actually goes. In order to put together a great calendar, you need to do that and keep doing it to try to get to the point where what you plan to do for the week and what you actually do for the week become more and more similar. So with that in mind, we'll take a look at the apps. And for most of you, these are probably very well known already, to help you get from now to a day when you're very well prepared to take the LSAT. The Google Calendar, or any other calendar for that matter, that you can get a hold of on your laptop and on your cell phone. An excellent practice is to, let's say every Sunday afternoon, plan out the whole week, but this is very important. Calendars only work if you include everything. Breaks, relaxation, all of that, not just the work you're going to do. The second thing, and this is where Drucker comes in, Schedule Planner is one app you can get on your iPhone. You'll see the link here if you want to look at it online. And lots of other apps out there, similar apps. You can take a look at this website, for example, businessnewsdaily.com. After you've planned out the week, do what Drucker did. Every hour, every half hour, write down what you actually did. Take detailed notes, and then at the end of the day, you can see if what you planned was realistic. You can see what got in the way, and then you'll have a much better sense of what a good calendar would look like when you put it together next week. Now, the third app, and I'm going to guess that most of you are probably not familiar with this, Trello. Trello. It is fantastic. Some would describe it as life-changing. And here are a couple of YouTube pages you can look at to learn the details. But basically, Trello is a website and an app where you can create very specific to-do lists for basically everything in your life. And what you do is, and the videos will describe this, you go on there and first you create a number of boards, different boards for all kinds of subjects. And then once you create the board, you want to create particular lists And then in each list, you'll create cards. And of course, the videos will explain all this to you. But I highly recommend Trello because once you take a look at the calendar, you said, all right, I'm going to sit down at, let's say, 7 p.m. on Wednesday and do LSAT prep for 2 hours. Then you sit down at 7 p.m. Well, what exactly does doing, quote, LSAT prep mean? Well, it may mean 10 different things, not just 2 different things. And LSAT prep is probably one of the more simple projects you can put together. But Trello can make you much, much more productive on just about anything. And then the last two that most of you are probably familiar with already, but Google Drive and Dropbox, very similar to each other. Try them both. Just create an account. It's free. All of these are free. When you sit down to complete a task, it's very helpful to have quick access to every document you need. And yes, that goes without saying, but just to get started with Google Drive and or Dropbox, if you haven't already, it can be a real big help. So as always, I hope you found the lesson helpful. I hope the top 5 list was helpful. I hope it will be helpful in the future. It would be fantastic if you can click the like button, share this video with your friends. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. The next lesson, lesson 7, we'll talk about another sequencing game. Look forward to seeing you then.